At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES broadcast with your host, Soul Blazer.
Hello, everybody. This is Super NES Podcast, episode number 164. As always, this is your faithful team of hosts. I am Greg. He is Joe.
Hello.
And we are here again with another pick from Joe this time to make up for some of the earlier picks that I had kind of hogged to bring on guest hosts. So that's why Joe's being allowed to. Joe's being allowed to pick back to back. We were changing gears totally with this episode as opposed to some of the previous week's episodes that we've been covering. Joe, what game did you pick for us to cover this time, and why did you pick it?
I picked Tiny Toon Adventures Buster Bust Loose, and I picked this because I, as you know, grew up as a Genesis kid, so I had Tiny Toon Adventures Buster's Hidden Treasure, and it was a staple of my Genesis. Like, that was, like, put alongside Sonic 1 and 2. Like, it was played every day, and that one was crazy because it had a 20-character password system, which we'll get to with this game and how short the password system is. But, yeah, it was like writing down Metroid-style password systems just to save on the Genesis cartridge, which was tedious. And a lot of the times I would just sit down and try to blow through the entire game. General gameplay was about an hour and a half because there was quite a few levels. But, yeah, so that inspired me to check out this one here on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, the password. I don't know if you look at the password system that this game uses is pretty interesting too. But
yeah,
I guess I prefer sidetrack. I guess I prefer games that use like characters for password system as opposed to like actually letters and numbers because it's usually simpler. It's simpler to write down and use.
Right.
B, you don't really have quite the same category of category to pick of symbols to pick from as you would of letters. So it makes passwords themselves kind of easier as well too. Because right now passwords as a kid for games was really annoying because some of them especially had like O's and zeros and like I's and L's and whatnot. Really complicated trying to figure out what was what. But passwords that use symbols, I was more like in favor of because those were not really that bad to like write down. So
yeah, and I mean we can quickly touch it on for this game because it's not really that important. I don't think we're going to talk long about it anyways. But I mean the password system here, like it's the different characters and you just 3 spots. That's it.
Right.
And my hardest thing, like because I looked up a couple of the passwords so I could see the later levels. And my biggest thing was trying to remember the character names because that was how it was written out on the FAQ. So it's like trying to figure out who's who. That was the biggest problem I had. And at the this time when this game came out, I would have been a teenager and would have I was still faithfully watching cartoons much like I do today. So I mean, like I would have known the characters. I would have known the names right away. So it wouldn't have been that big of a deal.
Right. Well, I was in high school when this came out, so I did not. I did not watch the show. So for anybody who doesn't remember, who also did not watch it like I did, Tiny Toon Adventures ran for 3 seasons, from 1990 to 1993, which was produced by Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment Company for Warner Brothers. And basically, as the name kind of implies, it's set in the Looney Tunes world, where it's like the next generation of characters. It's just like sending school to become like Toons. Basically, it's kind of like think like Star Trek Next Generation, except for kids. I guess is the best way to describe it. So, Yeah, the show was canceled. Despite the show doing well, it was canceled in 1992 to like the company could focus their efforts upon like Animaniacs, which was which was a bigger hit. So, however, I did find in my research that a reboot show, Tiny Toons Luniversity, was announced last year. So,
Yeah. Yep.
Which is not out yet, I don't think, because I'm sure the pandemic probably slowed things up.
Yeah, that's not out yet.
But yeah, anyway, so have you watched the show recently, Joe? Does it hold up?
It does actually. A lot of the jokes that they put in those cartoons were very much like the original Looney Tunes, where it's a humor based on more physical comedy of the cartoons than it is the wording or jokes per se. But the jokes they do use are always like a wink and a hint to the adult watching with the kids,
Right.
more than it is for the kids. So as an adult, you can appreciate a lot more of the humor that goes into those cartoons.
Right. Yep. Okay. Yep, that makes sense. So, but yeah, so the show was definitely popular enough to have a whole bunch of games produced for it, and again, I'm surprised. There were games made for this well after the show came to an end. So, I guess that people saw saw this as being like an ideal well to mine for kids, as far as games went.
Yeah, I think the last game came out in like 2002 for like the Game Boy Advance, which
Yes.
totally blew my mind.
Right. So two main companies had the rights to produce games for the Tiny Toon Adventures during its lifetime. The original company that had the rights to it was, surprisingly enough, Konami. Konami was definitely at the peak of its power in the early 90s, after 90s. We talked about Konami before in the past. Konami definitely was one of the best game companies of the 80s and 90s. They were large, they were dedicated. A lot of companies would, so we were talking about this like off mic. A lot of companies would just like port games to systems, Super NES, Genesis. Not Konami. Konami was big enough and had resources to actually make different games to the systems to take advantage of the strengths of the hardware. That's why you had different games for like different Castlevania games, different Contra games, and also other things, and also for like Tiny Toons as well. So. So they made their games from 1991 to 1994, and the first game they made was on the NES in 1991, and they also put out games for the Game Boy, Genesis, and Super NES as well. One of the most interesting games they made was Tiny Toon Adventures Cartoon Workshop for the NES, which actually allows you to be able to make your own cartoon based upon a very limited selection of like clips and scenes that they have on the carts. Very, very forward-thinking, interesting idea for the time period.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was the first game for the Super NES that came out. The Genesis one that Joe mentioned came out the following year. Both systems also get like a sports game themed on Tiny Toons later on in 1994. The Super NES one's called Wacky Sports Challenge. The Genesis one's called Acme All Stars. So then there was also a PC game in 1996. And then 1998, a different company called, a different publisher, different companies got the rights to Tiny Toons, and they also made some PlayStation, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games, with the last one that Joe mentioned coming out in 2002. And that was actually Treasure Game. Treasure actually made the last game for this, so that's interesting. But there was a PS2 game that was planned, even after the fact that was canceled. So. But yeah, 2002 they were starting making Tiny Toon games. I thought that was curious.
Yeah.
So I guess said before, I guess just like a pretty good license for it to use. So, so this game, Bust Loose, as you may guess from the name, centers around and follows an adventure that Buster Bunny, one of the main characters of the show, goes on. So. This game I mentioned before was entirely developed and published by Konami. It came out in Japan in December 1992. North America saw it in February 1993, and Europe got it in June 1993. So it's a pretty typical platformer game in most respects. There are 6 levels altogether. Although one of those levels is not seen in easy mode. There are 3 difficulty settings: easy, normal, and hard. The game calls them children, normal, and challenge. Which again, that's a difference. The Japanese version only has two settings: easy, normal, for some reason. But so the main difference between them is the fact that, like I said before, easy mode has one less stage. They're smaller in easy mode. They actually went in there, they chopped out some pieces of each stage to make the game shorter. And then like in hard mode, they get more difficult by only getting Buster like one health container to use. So also the number of containers are reset after each level. So that definitely adds some randomness factor and some also like difficulty setting to the game. Having said that, I thought the difficulty of this game was like pretty balanced. I tried all three settings, and I thought they were all like pretty tailored. And compared to many other games, at least it feels like there's an actual difference between the difficulty settings that this game uses.
Yeah, I mean, I played it on normal, and I had some difficulties, but it wasn't anything. I swear, I'm getting worse at platformers in my old age. My thumbs don't move the way they should, or something like that. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, for the most part, I found the game challenging in places, but then there were other parts where, like, it felt rather easy in all reality.
Yeah, so, looking at the game, the platformers, looking at the game, there's not really too much here that's surprising as far as the actual game presentation itself. Like you just mentioned a moment ago, you have a life gauge, which only like a single heart, like in heart mode. Like hard mode. Otherwise you can, have like two hearts. There's a dash mode that you can build up to use to dash across the stage. Extra lives you can pick up, and there's also like stars, like any kind of like Mario-ish game. 100 stars give you like extra life. So I don't remember there being power-ups in this game. Did you see anything, Joe?
No power-ups. If you can use your dash and you got enough of a runway, the dash kind of makes you invincible, kind of, and will kill off the enemies in your way. But at some point, your dash runs out and you will get hit.
Right. Yep.
But that was the only thing that I really saw as far as like a quote-unquote power-up.
Yeah. There are also mini games sometimes that they have to. Sometimes they have to reach stage.
Let's talk about these mini games.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I like the idea, like they're trying to front load you with a bunch of extra lives or the ability to get a bunch of extra lives, which is good. I really like that the game knows that it's challenging. You're gonna need these lives, but like the maze mini game where like you're Babs Bunny walking around and unlocking your cohorts throughout the maze. That wasn't bad. It was kind of like Mrs. Pac-Man, except for instead of picking up pellets, you're just walking through the maze and unlocking the doors and getting everybody out within a time limit.
Right.
Then they had like some weird matching game, which I did not understand. But like you have characters on either side, and you're supposed to like match them, like who they go with or whatever, and like whatever. It like I did it blindly and ended up winning like a couple of lives. The hardest one that I had was like the squash bonus level where like you are the cat. I can't remember his name at the moment, and you're literally playing tennis against yourself. It's squash, and I mean the ball flies up against the wall, it bounces back, comes back at you, you hit it, and I know he's not Wile E. Coyote, but it's the Coyote character keeps walking back and forth, and if you end up hitting him, it'll stop the timer, and obviously the object is to hit as many balls as possible back and forth, and you'll rack up lives.
Right.
Then they have like a pipes game, which I really like the idea of putting a puzzle pipes game, and it uses Hampton and it works, but they for some reason inverted the controls for this pipe mini game. So up is down, down is up. It's so weird. I had it was frustrating. And then the final mini game, I don't even know why it exists. It's pointless. It's bingo. And you don't do anything. All you do is hit, one of the face buttons to launch the next ball. Plucky grabs the ball, and then it just automatically dots the card for you. And obviously it's predetermined, based on the card that you got, what you're going to probably end up winning as far as lives. But every bingo, you get a life. And, out of all of them, the squash one was probably my favorite. Just because, there's actually some skill. Like, you actually feel accomplishment when you're gaining those extra lives. All the rest of them, in my opinion, pipes could have been good. Pipes could have been good if they had kept the controls not inverted. I don't know why they did that, but it is what it is. But the match game, the maze game, bingo especially, I could have done without them, but they were there. It is what it is.
Yeah. I generally agree. Like of all that, I guess by doing research that the actual mini game with the spinning wheel is based upon a specific episode. So
yes, that's the one thing I really like about this game. Actually, is that every level, the mini games are all in some way connected to some episode. At that time, I think would have been like the first season. So
92, they were like in the second, third season by the.
Okay.
Point,
so either way, but yeah, they all use different elements from different episodes. There was actually a YouTube video I saw that I can't remember who it was, but they actually mentioned some of the episodes while they were doing their review. So it was really nice to see that, and I know that I wasn't crazy because I swore I'd seen episodes like that.
Right. Yep. So yeah, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, some of the enemies you also fight. Some of the enemies, the bosses that you also have to deal with, are also like from the show. So, for example, like one of your level objectives is to feed a dizzy devil so he doesn't destroy the school. And so another one likes to defeat Duck Vader, which is great.
Yep. Yeah. This game, just to reflect back a little bit, this game was so much better with boss battles than the Genesis version. Hidden Treasure.
Why do you say that?
In Genesis Hidden Treasure, all your friends are basically being controlled by a mad scientist, which you actually fight the mad scientist in level 3 in this game. He's the one at the very end of the haunted mansion, with the weird hodgepodge character that throws things at you.
Yep.
So that mad scientist actually controls all of your friends, and your friends are basically the attack move for the scientist, and then you have to jump on the scientist's head. I think it's 5 times total to knock him out and free your friend. And every level was unique, but every boss battle was pretty much the same.
Yeah.
The first level, you have Dizzy Devil, and he's being mind controlled, so he's spinning around, erratically and whatever else, and you have to, jump limb from limb on trees to jump on the mad scientist, that sort of thing.
Right.
And yeah, it's just, I don't know, the bosses in this level actually kept me engaged, where the Genesis version, I played through them, and I, like I said, I grew up with that game, so I love them for what it is, but comparing it to this is much better.
Yeah. Which is kind of surprising to hear you say that, because like I said before, we're gonna get into this here a little bit, but it's it's I was Super NES kid, but I did play a lot of Genesis games, so I did play a lot of did play a lot of Konami made games, and it's I thought Konami did an excellent job, like I said before, because they had the resources to actually make different games for different systems. It's every Konami game I ever played with Genesis, I was great. So
yeah,
it sounds like they may have dropped the ball a little bit with that one, which is kind of surprising to hear that. But
see, I don't think that it's that they dropped the ball. So if you were to compare the two games, this game has 6 levels. They're pretty straightforward and linear. Whereas the Hidden Treasure literally has a Mario World, Super Mario World style over level, and then there's 5 little levels within a world, and then it's a giant map.
Yeah.
So I think personally that it's they created this world, they created the game of what it was going to be, and it was kind of an afterthought, like, oh, what are we going to do as far as boss battles go?
Yeah, okay.
And I think that's really the weakest point of Hidden Treasure. I love Hidden Treasure. It is a great game. It has great original music, which you usually don't get on the Genesis because of the boops and beeps and farts and everything else that come from that FM sound chip. But also, like, there's no dying cats, which is a big plus, which you would get a lot back in the day. So, I mean, other than that, I mean, there's a reason there's a password system. Like, there are a lot of factors. You have power-ups that let you use your cohorts as, like a buddy system. You can send out, like, little beeper to fly across the screen, and he'll clear out all the enemies. Things like that were nice additions and whatnot. It's really, I mean, it sounds like I was kind of bashing it, but it's really like the boss battles are the only thing that's kind of meh in that game.
Yeah, it's just a different style of game. It's like which you may or may not enjoy depending upon your style for that. Because
right.
But yeah, so oh, sorry, but so overall, I mean, like like I said before, Konami was at the peak of their powers during this time period, and it's like every game ever played by them during the 80s and 90s pretty much was very, very good. And this game also this game also is no exception. Even though I don't know source material, so so I think that may ding me a little bit and like not knowing it. But still, playing the game, it's still very, very well done. I mean, the graphics are very good. The characters look like they came straight out of the so the characters themselves look like they came straight out of the cartoon.
Yeah.
The backgrounds are not cartoon based like some other games, which maybe people might knock. But having said that, the graphics themselves are still very well. The game's still programmed very well. The graphics are still like very sharp, detailed, like colorly, like full color. There's some neat tricks on the stages, like stages like falling apart, where we have to go like up or down, as opposed to side to side, that kind of stuff. So the graphics are like very good. The music's fun. It's appropriate to the appropriate. It's like it's fun. It's fun. It's bouncy. It's boppy. So
to a point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like sorry, I just wanted to touch on that real quick. So the music I thought was actually really good in this game. My biggest issue was there are at least 4 instances where they just use the Tiny Toon theme song just in a different cadence. So like when you're in the space world, it's like a space opera type thing, and it's very operatic version of the Tiny Toon Adventures theme song. Same with the train, it's like a Wild West version of the Tiny Toon theme song. And I just felt like, again, kind of like with the Genesis version, I felt like there was a point where they were just like, we're done trying.
Okay, that's interesting. I did not pick up on that, probably because I wasn't familiar with the song.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I mean, they did that with other games too. It's like the Indiana Jones collection on the Super NES. They they used Indy's theme at like 5 different times in like that game. It just like just like different versions of it. So
yeah.
Again. But so maybe, but like I said before, I didn't notice that. So, but controls are very critical for like a platformer. I thought these controls were great. The controls were tight, responsive. No cheap deaths. I felt like that the like before. I thought the difficulty was well balanced, like the stage, the stage and level that you were on. Before, because Konami was no slacks at making platformer games. They knew what they were doing. So
right.
They had the mechanics of that. The mechanics of that down pretty solid.
Yeah, this is another area where it gets a plus in the Super Nintendo column. So you're right. The controls are tight. Buster responds the way you would expect him to. Unfortunately, when in the Genesis Hidden Treasure version, Buster has a wicked momentum program on. It's like, so he'll start running really fast, which does nothing but let you jump a little higher and get through the level quicker. But he skids when he tries to stop.
Doesn't he do that like in this game too?
It's not as bad.
Okay, all right.
Yes, he does do it in this, but it's not as like. There are times where Buster in Hidden Treasure for the Genesis, he'll literally just like slip right off of a platform, even though you like long ago let go of the controls.
Huh.
Like he just keeps sliding. It's really annoying. That's one of the quirky aspects why I don't recommend it to some people, because of things like that, because there are points where you have to be going super fast and can't do that. But yeah, I thought this game handled it really well. And actually I started to draw comparisons to like this to almost like Sonic at times. Like this was the Super Nintendo's version of Sonic. It was super fast. It was really well versed as far as platforms go. I thoroughly enjoyed this, needless to say.
Yeah. So the game itself is pretty average length for platformers this time period. 45 minutes to 60 minutes. If I go through it. One setting. I feel like I said before, you do the password. Like I said before, you do the password system. So you can always use that if you want to. For sure, give it a password after each stage. There are also we haven't touched upon this yet. There is there is a story. There is there are simple cutscenes given to you the game stage at the end of every stage, and the presentation for that's very nice too, because it kind of has almost like an old schooly cartoony look to it. So yeah, that's not plus to it. So. But even without the pass system, this game's not an overly long game to complete.
Right.
The speed run on this I could find online was 21 minutes and 48 seconds, which is damn. So
yeah,
that's good. He's and obviously platformers are popular games for speedrunners because. But yeah, so this is one too that also pretty good for that. So, but and like my platformer games, if you want to see the best ending, you have to beat the game in hard mode. But,
of course.
The ending's not that different from what I could see on this. So it's the dialogue's a bit different, a few different scenes. That's pretty much about it. So, the old fashioned the old-fashioned Warner Brothers, that's all, folks, kind of ending. The last screen's a nice touch. So,
yep.
Downsides, not really too many. I think we talked about the few minor complaints we had with this game earlier, already. It's the replay value of this is kind of limited, I think, because the fact that they did a good job of changing the difficulty of each of the three stages to make it either easier or harder depending upon what you're playing as. But it's there's not really anything new added to the game. It's once you go through it a couple times, you're probably gonna be that's it. So
yeah.
A 2-player mode would have been nice if possible. I mean, maybe putting in what was Buster's girlfriend?
Babs.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was the star of some of the other games too.
Yep.
So a two-player mode, even if not co-op, would have been nice. I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess even though it's a very well put together platformer, because I think that Konami Treasure made the best platformers, period. But so. But if you don't like platformers, you're not gonna like this game. So I mean, that's and like I said before, Joe probably got a bit more out of this than I did because of the fact he knows source material and I don't. But having said that, I still enjoy the game. I just think probably if I'd known the cartoon, I'm going to give this, for example, 5 stars. 5 stars as opposed to maybe a 4-star rating. So
yeah, that's understandable.
But having said that, you don't really need to know anything about the show to enjoy this because, like I said, there's a very simple plot. The plot's given to you in cutscenes in the game, so it's what's going on essentially. So I mean, maybe you don't recognize all the characters or settings or scenes or the music or whatnot, but still you can still pick up and have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so this is just another very very classic, well put together platformer game of the time period. So, don't let your kitty look disillude you. In hard mode, the game is hard. Only having the one heart as opposed to 3 hearts that the regular game gives you. I think it's like 2 earlier. There's actually like a max of 3 you can get. It does make it challenging, especially the fact that, especially also there also the random setting, like the heart containers in the stage. So, so yeah, hard definitely is challenging. So, do not let the key nature of this game kind of put you off in that. Having said that, hard mode is also not as hard as some of the platformers of the time period were. So it is beatable with legs and practice. So there's that. Like going forward. So, so Joe, now that you play like both games, do you really favor one or the other, or do you think Konami programmed both games differently enough that both games are like worth playing?
Both games are definitely worth playing. I definitely am going to give the nod to the Super NES version, only because, as I've stated before about, the controls and whatever else, I felt the graphics looked a lot better here on the Super Nintendo. The music's great on the Genesis, and I actually, like that over the Super Nintendo score that we have here. But like I said, that's because having watched the show, I understand that they recycled the original theme song over and over again, just in different tones.
Right.
Where the Genesis has a completely original soundtrack. The only time you hear the Tiny Toon Adventures theme song is obviously at the title screen, but only in the first level. Like, once you get out of the first level, it's all original music to the end. So that was kind of nice. Like I spoke of before, the momentum in the Genesis one is a little too much, in my opinion. I felt this one, like, it felt right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't stop right away when you're using the dash, but he also doesn't skid for, like, half a screen either. The other nod that the Genesis gets is the story. They did a really good job of not only having quote-unquote cutscenes. It's really just a static character with word bubbles, but those also transition during gameplay. So before you have the boss fight with whatever character, they actually have word bubbles that explain, like, a conversation between them as to what's going on. So that was kind of nice, where I felt like this one was just a very generic story. Like, the Genesis had a generic setup, like, the mad scientist kidnapped Babs and you have to go rescue the damsel in distress.
Right.
And, this one was a little better as far as creating a story, but the story there was no substance there.
I can see that. I mean, like, but platformers, I've always suffered from that, with a couple notable exceptions.
Yeah.
So, like, the Mario game, Super Mario World, for example, actually has like a pretty good plot for it, like for what it is.
Yes.
But yeah, most platformers are pretty light on that material, so I'm not really shocked by that.
And probably the biggest complaint that I had against the Super Nintendo version was an attack button. Why does there have to be an attack button, especially when it's just a jump and a flip? Like, just let me jump on the guy.
Oh, yeah, that didn't really bother me that much, but
yeah, like I was confused. Like, I jumped on a guy and I died, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "This is a platformer. I'm supposed to jump on him. And he's supposed to die. What's going on here?" And then I realized that you do like this little kickflip thingy, and that's how you attack. So that was another one where the Genesis kind of gets the nod because it's a platformer where you just jump on people's heads and they die. So, I mean, other than that, like I said, I really enjoyed both, but the Super Nintendo gets the nod, mainly because the Super Nintendo gets the nod because there's 6 levels, they're well thought out, they're fun to go through, the bosses are engaging, and the ending, the twist ending, spoiler alert, that it's all a school play was really nice. Like, it was a nice little kind of pivot that I wasn't expecting. So that was nice.
Yeah.
Whereas the Genesis one truly has probably about 30 to 40 levels, but there's that 20 character password system using uppercase and lowercase letters that can confuse any kid and adult. And now thankfully, save states are a thing. It's not that big of a deal. But to have to run through that entire game in one sitting, or have to write down this giant password, was really the Achilles heel of the Genesis version.
Yeah, where Super NES password system, like we mentioned previously, is only like 3 characters. And that's
Right.
it. So
Right. Exactly.
it's a much easier one to use.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I definitely agree with all of that. That was very well said. So, again, speaking about passwords, there are 2 hidden passwords you can use for this game if you want to. One password will give you the ability to play the bonus levels if you want to like practice a bonus level, or if you just enjoy a mini game there enough to want to play it again. This password does allow you to do that. So there's also a password to give you like unlimited continues. So you can use that too if you want to as well also. But so yeah, not many reviews of this game when it first came out. However, the reviews that came out contemporary and also the reviews that came out now are generally positive for this game. Most of the marks that most of the marks I saw this game were give like 80s and 90s as far as the score goes. So the same kind of like pros and cons for the game that we already talked about previously. So this game also was obviously very, very popular, and also Konami being a big company probably like produced like a gazillion copies of it. Because it's very cheap to find on eBay even today. So there are a whopping 150 copies of this game currently being listed on eBay right now, with 104 of them like recently sold. So no problems finding a copy of the game on there. Pricing's pretty good for Super NES games as well too. Carts only, they've sold anywhere from like $9 to $22 in the past, and CIB copies have sold for anywhere from $25 to $67. So. Pretty cheap Super NES game to pick up if you want to pick up. There's also one VGA graded copy which I cannot believe sold for $2,100. That's just like insane to me. But,
That is crazy.
It is what it is though. I've already ranted about that in past podcasts. I'm not going to do so again. But anyway, yeah. So if you want this game, it's pretty cheap. Pretty cheap to pick up. Because the license has not been like reprinted or is available like in the format. However, like I said before, this game emulates just fine. If you want a physical copy, you can get that like pretty cheap, so no problems there like that end. So I've played a bit of the other Tiny Toon games. This kind of makes me want to go back and check them out again like further on, because I did play a little bit of the first NES Tiny Toons game, and it is similar to this game in some ways. But I remember being positively impressed by that one too. So it's like I think all the Konami Tiny Toon games are probably like very good. So I may go back and check out some of the other ones like too.
So I was actually just searching and I found it. So in the March 93 issue of Nintendo Power, this is what they had to say about Tiny Toon Adventures. Buster charges through a world of crazed tunes, traps, and puzzles in 6 wildly different levels with multiple stages. The inventive bonus areas between action stages are almost as fun as the regular game. Both the graphics and animation will remind you of the TV cartoon antics of Buster. As for gameplay, you may look cute and cuddly, but he is definitely into turbocharged action. Get up to speed with this issue's review, where they actually do like a 4-page spread. So the biggest negative, so the positive they put on here is Buster's high-speed dash is great, looking for outstanding graphics and sound, and also looks for a wide variety of game situations from strategic bunny bopping to bonus rounds. The biggest thing they said is the theme of the game might attract younger players who find it too challenging, which is fair. That's a fair assessment.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. So, but
I thought it would be interesting to have a contemporary kind of review. So.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yep. That sounds good. That was one I did not find when I was doing research. Doing my research on this. That's cool. But yeah, like I said before, 80s and 90s generally across the board. This game's still like well thought of even today. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's a very good platformer. Again, typical again, typical high quality Konami fare like the time period.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so so that was fun to check out. So thank you again for the recommendation as always, Joe. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So we are going back to guest hosts again with our next episode. We're very pleased to very pleased that the next two people on the podcast are going to be returners who've not been on the podcast for quite some time. We're kicking out the first one next time with Chris of numerous the Strange Gamer Network, and also Wayback Machine. He's coming on this game talking about a game called Tin Star, which I know nothing about. So, Joe, you were telling me a little bit about this before in the past. I can't remember what you said about it.
If I remember correctly, it's kind of like a light gun game, but not a light gun game, if that makes sense. Because I know you can use the mouse, and you can use the super scope and whatnot, but it's like you're this little dude, and you shoot things on the screen. It's going to be an interesting one, that's for sure. I don't remember enough to be able to, give a good description of it. Let's put it that way.
Yep. I'm sure Chris will be here to talk about this game in huge details. And we'll also be ready by that point too. So,
yeah, exactly.
But anyway, that will be our next episode. So stay tuned for that. Appreciate you listening as always. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, etc., check us out on Facebook. You can also send me an email directly if you want to at the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. Joe, how can they reach you?
You can find me on Twitter at JOESUX30, and I have a very public Facebook that you can find me there.
Yes, which is very active.
Yes.
Most people mostly either like cat photos like comic book finds.
Yeah, yep.
But anyway, all right. So thank you again, everybody, for listening. We appreciate it very much, and we'll catch you again next time. Take care, all, and stay safe.
Bye.
At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES broadcast with your host, Soul Blazer.